So good morning or good night, depending on where you are, and welcome to another anniversary album review of The Shield Doing the Couch. And today we're celebrating Alice in Chains Dirt, which turns 30 years old on September 29. So released back in 1992, and obviously this is regarded by many as their best and most known album. And this album cover, it's very epic.
Yeah.
Like everyone sees this album from afar out, that's Dirt. So what we're gonna do what we always do in this anniversary album reviews. We're gonna first say our first impressions of when we listen to the album. Then we're gonna go and name our favorite tracks of the album, mainly 3 or 4, and then we'll go in the final comments to see how it has aged 30 years later. Has it held up? So today I'm joined by Señorita Sabrosura and JC Rock and Metal Review. So first of all, good night. How are you guys tonight?
Too good.
Hi.
Nice, nice. So we're gonna start today the discussion with JC. So JC, what are your first impressions of when Alice in Chains Dirt came out?
Okay, I knew about Alice in Chains from the Facelift album. That was before the whole like grunge explosion. So I was a fan. After that, they released a single from the single soundtrack that was Wood, and that was like the first time I'm hearing like new music from Alice in Chains. So I was like really excited. So when this one came out, I think I bought it maybe like the first day or first week or whatever. And I don't think I heard any of the songs. I knew about Wood, and I had the CD. This is actually not my original CD. I actually rebought it because my original got lost along the way. But I popped in the CD, and the first thing you hear is them bones, and it's like down, and it was like so heavy. I just thought that this was like such a great album. I think like once you hear that first song, you know this is going to be a good album, and just like song after song, it was just everything was just so great. I think like back then, like well, I'll go into my favorite songs later, but I think back then my favorite song was like Rooster. I think now I'm gonna pick three different ones, but I'm not gonna pick Rooster. But that was my favorite one back then. But there's just so many just good songs, just start to finish, and I was surprised because their first album, Facelift, was a little different. They kind of like did like a little like jazzy stuff, and this was a lot heavier, a lot darker, grungier, and I love this. So this one, I used to just listen to this all the time, and I mean, I have nothing negative to say about it. So there's really nothing much more I can say because it's just like really such a great album. So that's why I just like I've loved it ever since. I mean, I've never like gotten bored of it. So it's just such a great album. That's really all I have to say about that because it's just like so good. I've always liked it. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So
Yeah.
now let's go to Señorita Sabrosura.
Well, I think I heard this album a few years later than it came out, uh, and I like it. But I was so into Nirvana, Soundgarden, Temple of the Dog. I like it, but not as much as those other albums and those other bands. And I think with the years, I started appreciating more. But I always felt that this was a band for men. I don't know if you get it. Like most of my friends that they were boys, they like it. They fell in love with Lainey and Alice in Chains, and with this album especially. And I think from all the grunge bands, this is like the heaviest, the most metal of all the grunge bands.
I would agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it took me time, and I have favorite songs and everything, but I think it because it connects more with men. Like I didn't connect immediately.
Macho man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I totally get what you say. So for me, I listened to this. I don't know exactly like sometimes in 92, 93. But I remember the first song I heard was Wood in the single soundtrack. And I like the bass line, and I like the way that both Lane Staley and Jerry Cantrell like did the harmonizing. So I thought that was very unique to that band in particular. And I know that they got lumped with the grunge, but to me they were harder edge. I didn't think of it as like a macho, like Señorita said, but I could see why, because their music is harder, and you know Nirvana and Soundgarden, they had songs that I think the girls would like it. But yeah, this one was more harder, and you know the topics. You know, it's no Lane Staley was obviously dealing with a lot of drug issues,
Yep.
and it shows in this album. Uh, I don't know if you guys know, but there's a untitled song that Tom Araya shouts on it from Slayer
Oh yeah.
on this album, and I thought that was very interesting. But yeah, I loved it when it came out. Wood was the first song, and I think I heard Man in the Box, but I didn't know Man in the Box was in the other album. But this was the first Alice in Chains album that I bought, and I like the cover, and I thought it was just, you know, like very different sounding, and yeah, but yeah, it was Wood that got me into the band. And I know they appear in the Singles movie and they have other songs there. So I was like, yeah, they're from Seattle, they're cool. Plus, at that time, if it was from Seattle, I was going to listen to it. I was like full into the Seattle music scene in the 90s. Like from 1992 to 94, 95, I was obsessed with that type of music. So yeah, that's how that's, you know, to me, yeah, that's how I discovered Alice in Chains back then. So now we're gonna go back to JC, and now we're going to talk favorite tracks.
Okay, so favorite tracks. My number one is Down in a Hole. And I think the reason why, like when the album first came out, I mean, I guess I liked the song, it wasn't really much of a big deal. But when I watched the video for the Alice in Chains Unplugged, watching Lane Staley sing Down in a Hole is like so much like emotion. I mean, if you've never seen that video, you gotta like, you know, watch it on YouTube. I mean, he just gives such a great performance of Down in a Hole. And ever since then, that has been my favorite Alice in Chains song. And I would say the live version, not the studio version. I mean, the studio version is still great. So that is my favorite. Now, if I have to pick two more, I mean, this is going to be kind of hard.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to say Them Bones, the album opener, because this brings me back to like when I first bought the CD. I popped it in the CD player and just hear that like riff, almost like it's very heavy, like a thrash metal riff almost. And you know, then Lane Staley stopped singing. You know, it's like I believe them bones, and it's just like really, really dark, really heavy song. It's kind of slow, as those really like thick and like, you know, chunky guitar riffs. And another one, it's gonna be a good kind of hard. I got this like pretty cool how the CD pulls out. This got all the
yeah.
lyrics here, and I can pretty much pick anything, but I'm gonna go with Angry Chair. Really cool slow song, and it says like really dark lyrics. The guitar riff, another one I used to play the guitar. It's kind of like an easy, pretty easy to learn on the guitar. It's like dun, dun, dun. And has like Lane Staley singing, you know, sitting in an angry chair. It's just such like this like really dark and like heavy song.
Yeah, it's
And
very dark.
yeah, and yeah, and I guess those are my three. But you know, I can pretty much pick so many different songs from here. It's just this album is just, it's just like dark. It's just so emotional. Like these lyrics, they're about, you know, like, you know, all this like emotional suffering, pain, you know, addiction. You know, it's just really well written. So anyway, those are my three. So
Yeah.
we can move on.
It's not feel good music.
No,
No, it is not.
no, it's not.
So what
No,
about
it's
you,
just very
Señorita?
emotional.
Yeah, no, it is.
It is emotional, but it's dark and
It
it's
is
not
dark.
about feeling good. It's about hard drugs, depression, and like I say, it connects with men because it's also about men trapped in certain conditions they can get out. Well, if I have to pick up, well, I agree with JC. I really like Down in a Hole, especially that MTV Unplugged uh like how he did it in the MTV Unplugged. Uh, for me, it's like a very memorable ballad of the whole album. Uh, my personal favorites, Rooster. I know it's like very overplayed, but it's like I found this one of the strongest in the album. Like it sounds very alternative. And then I really liked Them Bones, that guitar riff, and then the screams of Lainey and Wood. Yeah, we all heard them in the Singles movie, and it's probably one of the most famous. I don't know if because of the movie or because of then or what, and but it's the most famous for one of the most famous for a reason. Like it's a really good song.
Yeah, yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree. They're all good songs. So now me, I'll I think Angry Share is my favorite song of the album because it's so sinister, like sitting on an angry chair. The
Yeah.
moodiness
Yeah.
of that song. It's creepy. And I remember listening to that when I was like in my teens and just thinking like wow, this is like really really dark and really sinister. And I love Lane Staley's and Jerry Cantrell's voices on it. Lane, Lane had a great, like you could feel the pain in his voice.
Yeah.
It was so real. Uh, and I think other deep cuts on the album, like Damn That River, it's really good. And Rain When I
Yeah.
Die
Mhm.
are also good, to mention other ones.
Yeah.
I love Rooster, that opening line, ain't found a way to kill me yet.
Yeah.
And it's all about like war. And uh obviously Wood is the one that I first fell in love with. But yeah, and Them Bones is a great album opener, because it's a shorter song and it starts the album with that screaming of Lane, and
Yeah.
like real good. uh I think if like the song that I like the least would be like Sick Man. If I would have to say, like, not there's no bad tracks
Yeah.
on this album, but I think Sick Man is one of the less memorables. But other than that, I think the album is great. And Down in a Hole, I like you said, I love the MTV Unplugged performance. Back in the day, Nirvana's MTV Unplugged was my favorite, but not anymore. Alice in Chains Unplugged, I think, is the
Yeah.
best Unplugged ever. Uh, I said I need to get that one on vinyl, because that's just such a. And I think that was the last performance of Lane with the band. It was that MTV
Yeah. I think it
Unplugged.
might have been. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a great. So those are the favorite songs. So I think this is gonna be easy. Now let's go back to JC for the third round, and we're gonna say, Alice in Chains Dirt, has it held up 30 years later?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing much more to say. I mean, this is I just listened to it. Like I said, I had to rebuy this CD recently, and I was listening to it this week, and it's just like really good. Like every song is really good. There's like no filler on here. I mean, like you said, like you picked Sick Man. Like for me, maybe the ones in the middle, like Junkhead, Dirt, Godsmack. Okay, maybe those ones. Like if I was doing track ranking, I'd probably maybe like rank those like the least. But the front half and the last half, everything from Den Bones, Stand and River, Rain When I Die, Down in a Hole, Sick Man. I mean, those are all great. The ending with Hate to Feel, Angry Chair, Wood. I mean, those are all just really great songs. So I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, it does hold up. It's just
It's held up.
you know, it holds up, and I think like a lot of the grunge stuff, that did age well. I've said this before in other videos. Like some of the stuff from like those 80s bands, like I kind of like grew out of them. Some of those 2000s bands, like with like the hip hop and the rap and the new metal, I kind of grew out of them. But like the grunge, like I always go back to them. I've been going back to them like over the past 30 years. So especially this album here, this is just one that I always like go back to them and re-listen. So it does hold up. I think everything that Alice in Chains does hold up well. I would say, out of my favorites, I would say this one and Jar of Flies. Those are probably my top two.
Oh yeah, Jar of
Jar of
Flies
Flies is another one. I
I
love that
think
one,
that's
yeah.
the best, one of the best EPs ever.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
mean,
so
it's
good.
an EP. It's like almost an album. It's like 30 minutes long, but yeah. But
Yeah, to this day,
I found
it would be considered an album,
Yep.
but whatever.
yeah.
So
But
now,
we don't count it, yeah.
yeah. So now we're going with Señorita Sabrosura.
Yeah, I agree too. This album has held up, and I agree with JC said. Most of the grunge albums, they held up, and you can listen to them. Like they don't sound outdated, like some '80s glam rock bands, or those new metal bands. You can always go back to. And I really like um, this album, and Jar of Flies is one of my favorites too, because it, besides being good, I know they influence a lot of other bands, like to explore more slower but heavy sounds and dark themes, like go to dark places. Right? Something different besides sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Like, yeah, you talk about drugs, but in a different way.
Yeah, not so glamorized, like maybe
Yeah,
like the Motley Crues and the
exactly.
Poisons
Yeah.
and yeah. So yeah, so you think it's obviously, you hands down, you
Yeah,
say it's held up.
yeah.
So I guess that leaves me, and of course, I think this album has held up. I think Alice in Chains Dirt it's basically like a landmark album. And back
Yeah.
in the 90s, I was more of a fan at the beginning of the Pearl Jams and Nirvanas. But 30 years later, I can say I like Alice in Chains better than Pearl Jam, Nirvana, and Soundgarden. It's my favorite, actually, Seattle band. It's Alice in Chains. And I think it's because I never get sick of their songs. And even without Lane, they kept going and they kept their sound. But yeah, this was an album, they just threw out of the park with this album. Facelift is good, but this one is just excellent. It was just a magical moment in time where music could mean something, and and they were expressing like dark themes and getting played on the radio.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. And the band Godsmack actually took out their name from the song Godsmack. So many bands were influenced by them. There's many bands now that have put out like EPs like with that Jar of Fly sound, because also it was so good how they could be heavy, but they could also be acoustic and melodic. So yeah, to me, Alice in Chains, the real deal. And 30 years later, it's held up. So people, we want to know, what are your thoughts on Alice in Chains Dirt? What are your favorite tracks? What early memories you have of listening to this album, and how do you rank it in the Alice in Chains discography? So if you like the videos that I'm putting out, don't forget to give me a like. Don't forget to subscribe. I have more content on the way. And don't forget to subscribe to JC Rock and Metal Reviews and Señorita Sabrosura. JC Rock and Metal Reviews has some album rankings. He does album reviews as well. And sometimes I collaborate on his channel as he collaborates on mine. And Señorita Sabrosura has more like short videos about, if you want to know about rock in Spanish and that sort of thing, follow Señorita Sabrosura. And also we have more videos here, collaboration videos that you can check out. So people, until next time, this is Hector, the Shield doing a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you, and listen to Alice in Chains.